Well, for quite a while I've been wanting to get into ammunition reloading, and I've been slowly building up a few items here and there in order to do that, and I finally took the plunge after probably about a year and a half of research and watching videos on YouTube and reading articles in magazines and so on and so forth, and made a decision to go buy a Lee Classic turret press, which has an auto-indexing feature. Main reason I bought this is number one, cost. This is very inexpensive. I bought this from Grafs & Sons for a little over $102. That didn't include the dies or the Pro Auto Disc powder measure or the primer feed. That was mainly a press and one turret, but still that was quite reasonable considering it's a turret press with the auto-indexing feature. Looked into a Redding and a Lyman, and they were definitely a nice unit, probably overall a better quality unit than what the Lee is. But one of the reasons I wanted to get a turret press, besides the fact that once I get a little bit more experienced at reloading I could just go from one station to the next, was I wanted to make sure I could have all of my dies set on a turret and then put them in a drawer somewhere and then have them ready to go at any time. And I come to find out that the Lyman and the RCBS and the Redding extra turrets are like $45 to $60 each, and there's no doggone way I'm going to buy 4 or 5 of them for that kind of money. And I have seen the 4-hole turrets for the Lee press as low as about $8 to $10, so that was definitely a much more viable option. Now obviously purchasing this cheaper unit, that means that you run into a few more problems and a few more goofy little quirks, and that's kind of what this video is going to do, is show you at least one of those that could have really tripped me up, that I wanted to I never really saw anything else on any videos mention this, so I don't know if this is just maybe a defect in mine or whether maybe just nobody's noticed this or nobody's mentioned it. But when I first started using this, I seemed to have an awful lot of trouble getting primers to seat without them wanting to kind of distort or bend or just plain jam and not want to go up into the primer pocket, and obviously that's not a good thing. I luckily never had any of them go boom, but that's more probably just a simple fact I was pretty careful not to allow that to happen. I couldn't understand why it was happening. Every once in a while I would get 8 or 10 of them to go in really nicely, and then all of a sudden I'd pull the handle and it would just, I could feel it, it would just want to go right in half sideways. And I started watching the process really closely, and I've got this little cup thing that it loads into right there, and I thought, well, maybe it was not seating in there straightly, maybe it was going crooked or whatever, so I started for a while there actually touching down with my finger, which totally defeats the purpose of this Lee unit, because now as I'm touching down on the open end of that primer, I'm running the risk of possibly contaminating that with the oils on my finger. And the nice thing about this system is you never have to touch these primers from the time they come out of the box until the time that they're loaded, and now I'm actually sticking my finger on the open end of it, pushing down. But anyways, I come to find out that they were seating just fine with the automatic unit, so I just couldn't understand what the heck was going on here. I got to looking around and I noticed my decapping pin was bent. I couldn't understand what was going on there, but I did remember some of these. When I was decapping, some of these were quite hard, and I come to find out that Fiocchi brass, at least the Fiocchi brass I have, maybe I just have a bad lot, is pretty much garbage. I don't know if I'll be able to get this in the picture Let me back this off here. But I don't know if you can see that or not. It's going to be awful hard to tell. But basically, take my word for it, that primer flash hole is not in the center at all. It's way offset. And I have literally 4 of them that are like that right now out of about 200 that I decapped. But you have to remember, I've got a whole mixture here. I only actually shot 1 box of Fiocchi brass, and out of that 1 box of 25, 4 of them that I know of have flash holes that are way off to the side. So I think that's what bent my decapping pin. So I'm looking at that and I'm noticing what was happening here. I'll try to, this is kind of hard for me to do. I'm not much of a cameraman, but I'll see what I can do here. I was noticing, I'll put these in, and running it up and resizing it, and then putting the primer in. I don't know if you know, I'll try to zoom this in as close as I can to where it'll still focus. That's going to be kind of hard to do. But I don't know if you notice, when I come down out of there, that brass is actually pushed forward some. So when you go to load that primer, it's off center. The hole is off center from the hole in the brass because the brass is literally pulled forward. So I actually have to, each one of these I have to push that forward to reseat it forward, and now the primer will seat right in. This is nice as can be. So I don't know when I originally saw that, I thought, okay, my decapping pin's bent, which is going to be kind of hard to see on camera. But if I rotate this around, you can see the end of that's bent. It's probably going to be kind of hard to see. But anyways, take my word for it, it's bent, probably because of that junk Fiocchi brass. So I'm thinking, okay, with that decapping pin in there, what it's doing is it's hitting that and then pulling that brass forward. So I took the decapping pin clear out. It's totally out of the works now. And still, it pulls that brass forward. Every time I load one of these, it pulls that brass forward and it comes down and hits right there. If I were to push down on that right now, I would probably actually jam that primer right in that cup, like happened a few times. And basically what I did then, I would take that thing outside and I'd use my needle nose pliers and hold it back about as far away as I could hold it back and dig that thing out of there and then get rid of it. And obviously that was somewhat nerve-wracking after about 7 or 8 times. But like I said, once that comes down out of there, you push forward on that, seats right in. So I think what is actually going on here is, I think this hole for this turret is probably off. It's not in the center line of the shell holder. So when you bring that up to resize that, it's pulling that forward so it lines up with the hole. And now you're off for the primer hole. So that's a quirk on this cheap stuff that you have to keep an eye on. But basically, I'm just about out of primer, so as long as I push that forward, every time you'll seat just fine. So if you run into that to where it's wanting to take that primer and actually kind of crush it off to the side, that's probably what's happening. It's just something I wanted to show everybody. Overall, I've loaded, I think, 75 rounds with this so far, and I'm really surprised, at least with Winchester 231, the Lee Pro Auto Disc is absolutely dead spot on. I've got 2 different scales that I use. I compare back and forth between the two of them, and then I have some calibration weights that I use. And literally, before I even loaded one single round, being totally new at this, I threw 10 charges with this Lee Pro Auto Disc and measured all 10 of them. And at the time I was loading 4.8 grains of Winchester 231. Every single one came out to 4.8 grains, all 10 of them. So then throughout the process, I loaded about 10 of those up, shot them. They worked pretty nicely. Really light recoil, pretty accurate. So now I have 50 of them there at 5 grains that should be a little bit hotter, but hopefully still retain the same accuracy. I'm using 165 grain Sierra Sportmaster 10 millimeter, or 40 S&W, and accuracy is very good with the Winchester 231 at the loads that I'm using. But anyways, this Pro Auto Disc I was very happy with how accurate it truly is. Now I understand I've also got a pound of Unique in there. I guess it does not meter Unique well at all, and any flake powders it won't, because it wants to bridge across the holes. But I'm just going to keep experimenting with this, and once I get a little bit more experience reloading, I can test things out a little bit more. But I just kind of, once I ran into that, I thought I ought to maybe put that on YouTube in case anybody, either somebody's run into that and maybe they have a fix for it, which I think the fix is probably to have a turret with a hole in the right location, or maybe somebody doesn't know that and they keep crushing primers and they don't know why. Well, might want to look into that, see if that's pulling that brass forward. If it is, then that's exactly why you're crushing primers. You've got to have that brass pushed against, seated up against the back of that shell holder. And when I come down to resize, it pulls it forward every time, with or without the decapping pin. So it's just something to look into. I guess I kind of jabbered a lot longer than I planned on this video, but I just wanted to make sure I gave all the information I could and make clear as to what was happening here. And maybe later I'll show a few rounds that I loaded. I don't know, we'll see.